Good morning, everyone, and good evening to our colleagues in Vienna and Europe, anywhere else you are. So on behalf of the Cooperative Monitoring Center at Sandia National Laboratories, I want to welcome to our virtual CMC seminar event, addressing the present and future scientific collaboration to advance global security and peace. My name is Amir Mohagegi, and I'm the Managing Director of the CMC. I'm going to make sure the whole event goes smoothly. Let me just share a few ground rules with you. First, this is an unclassified event. Please keep that in mind when you ask questions or make comments. Second, please mute your mics during this presentation to avoid a bunch of accidental interruptions. I'm sure we all have stories to share at that point. Third, if you have a question for the speaker, please don't put it in the chat box. Please email it to cmc@sandia.gov. That's CMC for Cooperative Monitoring Center at sandia.gov. Our moderator, Ms. Tina Hernandez, is going to ask as many questions as she can. Lastly, if this meeting fails, which has happened in the past, or if you cannot hear the speaker, the quickest fix is to exit the meeting and re-log in. Please accept our apologies in advance for any technology challenges. And now to introduce our speaker and moderate today's event, please welcome Ms. Tina Hernandez. Tina, you have the screen.
Thank you, Amir, and again, welcome everyone. The Cooperative Monitoring Center at Sandia National Laboratories was created to demonstrate how technological cooperation can build trust and to provide a forum where experts can collaborate on scientific solutions to international security problems. For more than 25 years, the CMC has hosted and worked with experts from around the world to promote peace and security through science diplomacy. Today, the CMC celebrates the scientists and experts that are thinking across boundaries and beyond traditional problem sets to apply cutting-edge science, engineering, and technology to strengthen international security. With that, I want to welcome today's speaker, Ms. Jenni Rissanen. She is the team lead for strategic planning for the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA Department of Safeguards. The department is responsible for nuclear verification activities for more than 180 member states. Her experience at the IAEA is extensive and includes developing and implementing the state-level concept for safeguards, advancing strategic foresight and planning, and enhancing communication and engagement with member states, MPT policymakers, and other stakeholders, as well as establishing partnerships. After the talk, I will moderate a brief question and answer session with our speaker. Thank you again, and we welcome Jenni today for sharing her insights with us today. Jenni?
Good morning, everyone from Vienna, and thank you so much for the organizers for the invitation to speak, and also for the very kind introduction. We'll now switch over to the presentation itself, and if you give us just a moment. Okay, you should now be able to hopefully see my first slide. So I'm very happy to be speaking to you this morning about the challenges and opportunities for IAEA safeguards from emerging technologies and how we leverage partnerships. And so these activities fall into the domain of the strategic planning team within the Division of Concepts and Planning in the IAEA Department of Safeguards. One of our functions in the team is to monitor changes in our operating environment to better prepare for them. What we observe, as many other organizations, is that the global environment is becoming much more turbulent and more complex to operate in. Global dynamics are increasingly uncertain and challenging our ability to respond in an effective, efficient, and in a resilient manner. Some of the key changes in this environment include trends like, of course, the pandemic disrupted societies, an uncertain global economic situation and outlook, worsening climate change, and accelerating pace of technological change in particular. In particular, in the technology area, we see exponential growth in data velocity, variety, and volume. But at the same time, the growing availability of tools that undermine data veracity, such as deep fakes. Technology democratization is also changing societies by empowering individuals and groups in completely new ways. Turning now on to the nuclear landscape and some of the challenges that the IAEA is experiencing in that regard. Agency projections show that nuclear energy production is continuing to grow moderately, but with more diverse and complex technologies coming online. This includes reactors designed to be smaller and mobile, with some having closed fuel cycles and intended for deployment in remote areas. There are currently some 70 small modular reactor designs under development in at least 15 states with dozens of designers. The first floating reactor has already been deployed, and more are in development with plans for deployment at a commercial scale, including in some non-nuclear weapon states. And nuclear innovations continue to appear as scientists have even successfully printed nuclear fuel using additive manufacturing. These developments will challenge our department to obtain new areas of expertise, develop new safeguards concepts and approaches, and work in close cooperation with our partners to take advantage of technological opportunities. So that's kind of a very quick snapshot of how we view the external environment. At the same time, the IAEA's own work is constantly increasing. The number of states where we apply safeguards has increased by 5% in the last decade. The number of states where we can have access to more information and more locations, thanks to the additional protocol, has jumped by a third, which is, of course, a very welcome development, but at the same time also entails more evaluation work for us. The number of facilities keeps growing very steadily, as also does the volume of nuclear materials under safeguards and facilities. We are expected to adapt, even as these obligations outpace our resources. And one of the key ways in which to do this is to try and bridge the gap between resources and our workload is through technology. In fact, it is even a requirement for us under comprehensive safeguards agreements to take full account of technological developments in the field of safeguards. For the agency, technology is really a strategic enabler for our safeguards mission. Nuclear material accountancy itself relies very heavily on measurements and surveillance techniques so that we can verify the non-diversion of declared nuclear material and activities. Technology is even more important for the detection of undeclared nuclear material and activities, where we have much more limited measures at our disposal. For example, satellite imagery and environmental sampling are key tools for this, and have been, in fact, for quite a long time already. We also rely on IT tools and artificial intelligence to support the collection, processing, and analysis of safeguards relevant information. in order to navigate within this very changing and challenging operating environment, we conduct strategic foresight activities, and we develop plans to prepare how to overcome the challenges, but also how to seize the opportunities. This activity is one where we engage the whole department, getting direction obviously from senior management on priorities and leveraging staff expertise for their ideas and expertise. Recognizing the wealth of expertise that is out there in the world, we also tap into this in order to inform our own thinking. For instance, we organize emerging technologies workshops, and of course the Safeguards Symposium that brings together the Safeguards community every 4 years. And let me now share with you a short 2-3 minute video introducing our latest emerging technologies workshop, which we were lucky enough to hold just before the pandemic hit in January 2020. So after the video, I will also drill down a little deeper to share with you what we have learned in this particular workshop. But here is a taster to begin with. Well, run the video now.
New technologies offer opportunities that present challenges. We need to explore this opportunity if we want to move more effectively and efficiently. It's the only way to say I don't agree.
This workshop is part of the department's strategic planning activities, whereby we try to better understand the challenges, the threats, and the opportunities of our operating environment.
This has been incredibly useful for me because I've been able to engage with real-world practitioners and researchers, and they've actually given me a lot of fresh ideas that I wouldn't have originally had.
For Safeguards inspectors and for the Safeguards department, it's incredibly important to understand and keep abreast of what the technology sector is doing and what the different instruments and technologies that can enable their work to make their job easier.
One of the things that excite me about these emerging technologies is how we can collaborate in new ways by creating a good mix between the physical and digital worlds. Technology has always been, something there, and you could use it for the good or for the bad. And it's the people's choice to use it either for the good or the bad.
The sheer volume of data processed will have one or more zeros added to it.
Technology will never be able to take the policy decisions. Technology will be always a tool for us.
The human talent that the IAEA has cultivated here is the bedrock of why it's staying ahead of these challenges. I would invest in keeping that talent and having them stay apace of the technologies as they evolve.
Okay, I hope you found that introduction a useful one. So as mentioned, the workshop is part of our strategic foresight and planning activities. And what we're really trying to do with this workshop is to deepen our understanding of both emerging nuclear and non-nuclear technologies. So what do we mean exactly by emerging technologies? Well, new technologies, including techniques and methodologies, and novel technology applications that are currently in development or will be developed within the next 15 years or so. So what we're trying to do is to really explore the opportunities, the threats, and the challenges to safeguards. Our most recent workshop was a problem-driven, solution-seeking, and it was organized around 5 thematic, what we call incubators, where we try to find solutions. And in those incubators, what we had is outside expert presentations on key technology trends, and also case studies from industries with similar challenges presenting on their solutions. And I should mention that we have a dedicated externally available web page on this particular workshop, and you can find the video as well as the report from this particular workshop on that site. And I have shared that website address with Cassie, so we can hopefully get that from Cassie. In the first incubator, we really focused on how we might incorporate artificial intelligence and machine learning advances into safeguards surveillance. For our inspectors, video surveillance review represents an important, but at the same time, quite tedious and labor-intensive task, because most of the footage really is largely static, and the events of real interest are quite infrequent. So we explored at this workshop how learning-based algorithms can help automate detecting and tracking events of interest so that we can free up our inspectors' time for more complex analytical tasks. We had some very interesting examples from computer vision and AI techniques used in, for instance, autonomous driving industries to cope with unexpected events, as well as from the medical industry, which were quite inspirational. Well, but what is common is really that we learned that AI is really a strategic capability requiring a common organizational understanding of it and how to best use it, and that we really need to invest in the associated human resources. We also learned from our colleagues that the application of machine learning really never can beat or substitute for better data quality. So information management really is a key if we want to make AI a strategic capability. The detection of undeclared nuclear material and activity is a challenge in itself for us. And we have, as I mentioned, fewer tools for this. The growing volumes and the increasing diversity of open source information adds to that challenge, but also offers new opportunities. There are also a growing variety of commercial platforms offering data from diverse types of sensors that use algorithms for change detection and object identification. There are numerous additional types of sensor data to leverage and complement data currently being collected. We learned, for instance, from Descartes Labs, how they use a platform with artificial intelligence for predictive modeling for agriculture and for shipping. So what we're seeing is that the technology democratization is really empowering new players to access capabilities that used to previously be available only for states. Access is now easier and is also cheaper. That said, on the threat side, we also learned that technologies are threatening information veracity. And these kinds of technologies are advancing rapidly. We had a very interesting presentation which had been held in Davos at the World Economic Forum just a week before, where we saw how deepfake technologies are advancing. And this is something that we need to be very vigilant as a verification organization, because it touches on issues of credibility. In our third incubator, we studied how we might leverage technologies and approaches from other industries with similar challenges to rethink our whole approach to spent fuel verification. And this is really a strategic challenge for us, because the projected increase in the number of spent fuel casks with the current verification approach and seal verification requirements will overwhelm the existing resources to perform seal verification of dry spent fuel casks. Moreover, with interim storages filling up, the department expects increasing transfers of spent fuel transfers, the verification of which is very resource intensive for us. So one idea that we're looking into is the use of distributed ledger technology. And in fact, one of our member states, Finland, is already having a pilot project for nuclear material accountancy and control. So we're watching that with great interest. We also had in our workshop a very interesting example how distributed ledger technology is being used in another industry, and that is namely the diamond industry, in order to track diamonds throughout their entire life cycle. So two very different things, diamonds and spent fuel, but interesting parallels. And also another idea of potential application for spent fuel verification is using robotics for more routine tasks. And this is also to reduce the health and safety risks for our staff. And in fact, in that regard, our colleagues in another division have issued crowdsourcing challenges inviting ideas for the use of robotics. In our fourth incubator, we explored how we might enhance their analysis, interpretation, and communication of safeguards data and information through enhanced visualization. We recognize that the growing variety and abundance of safeguards data makes fully analyzing it challenging with current resources and approaches. Additionally, the technical nature of safeguards data creates challenges in communicating trends in and results of safeguards activities effectively to our external stakeholders, namely our member states. And at the workshop, we explored how visuals can help digest our abundant and complex safeguards data so that our analysts can better digest it. On the other side, we also learned how some other organizations, such as the World Food and Agricultural Organization, are turning their annual reports into digital form that, in a much better way, engage and measure the responses of the audiences. Already in our previous workshop 3 years ago, in 2017, we recognized that advances in additive manufacturing could introduce new pathways for acquiring nuclear material and capabilities, which in turn could undermine current safeguards assumptions and acquisition path analysis. So we wanted to revisit this topic 3 years later and found that the field is indeed advancing quite fast. Even in the nuclear area, we learned, for instance, that Canada has research efforts to print nuclear fuels. And we increasingly see news of other countries using additive manufacturing to print parts of parts for nuclear power plants. In general, we learned that additive manufacturing hardware, software, and services have increasingly lower barriers of entry, making them much more widely available. The confluence of additive manufacturing together with with artificial intelligence may present nuclear proliferation challenges that we have not yet seen, such as the indigenous production of nuclear fuel cycle components that would normally be more difficult to acquire. So this is something that needs to be really monitored and understood more in order to understand the risks. I'll now run another video summarizing the key points covered from this workshop. We'll run that now. I hope you enjoyed that video with the key highlights from the workshop. More generally, I wanted to share with you 3 very common themes that emerged from this workshop, as perhaps also from the workshop 3 years earlier. Firstly, we in the IAEA cannot do this alone, but we need to increasingly partner, especially in areas where we lack expertise, in order to accelerate innovation in the safeguards field. Secondly, we need to do more piloting. taking advantage of the technological opportunities and creating a culture that embraces some small experiments, allows some risk-taking, and builds on the successful pilots to foster larger scale change. And then finally, with technology evolving, we also need to continually prepare. So we need to monitor closely and prepare for technology trends. This is to avoid any technological surprises. We're now using these insights learned to inform the updating of our research and development plan, which we are just starting to do at the moment. We're also pursuing some of the pilot project ideas that emerged from this workshop, for example, by exploring how we can use AI to review video surveillance. We're also closely following the projects in member states that examine the potential of blockchain technologies with safeguards application. And then finally, we are now enhancing partnerships with non-traditional partners and actors. And I'll say a little bit more about this in a moment. As I have illustrated, the department is increasingly confronted with challenges. In order to be effective, efficient, and resilient, we need to apply cutting-edge technology, techniques, and knowledge. At the same time, we recognize that we do not have a dedicated budget or infrastructure for research and development activities, or even sustaining some of the essential capabilities. And this is where the role of member state support programs, of which we now have 21, is absolutely crucial in filling that gap. These financial and cash contributions are an essential part to help cover the costs of cost-free experts, junior professional officers, or even travel. National laboratories provide invaluable support in order to develop tools for safeguard specialized applications that would never be commercially available or viable. And many member state support programs provide access to their nuclear facilities for training and testing of equipment. And this is support that is not available on the market, and again, very precious for us. The International Network of Analytical Laboratories, in turn, provides analytical services and quality checks. And member states also provide expertise to address very specific challenges. That said, we have also observed that there is some untapped potential out there. In fact, there are many non-profit organizations that support our mission, and they wish to help us where possible. In fact, the 2018 Safeguard Symposium underscored the support that is out there in the wider safeguards community to strengthening partnerships. And one of the ideas for action that emerged from the workshop was to expand and leverage non-traditional partnerships to broaden the political, financial, and technical support for the safeguards mission. We heard the same at the 2020 Emerging Technologies workshop, where a number of the external experts that came to speak to us from different nonprofits and companies expressed their willingness to help. And in fact, it is part of agency strategy as well to expand non-traditional partnerships. The agency's medium-term strategy for 2018 and 23 considers partnerships really as a strategic enabler and directs the departments to intensify work to establish and facilitate new partnerships with all relevant partners, traditional and non-traditional donors, including from the private sector. Also, in our departmental strategic plan, we have the objective of leveraging and establishing partnerships. And our new Director General, Grossi, has really added new momentum to this effect. And this is, in fact, very important for us because of the growing gap between the workload and the budget. It means that the funds that are allocated to safeguards are prioritized to essential core safeguards activities, those mandatory activities that we absolutely must do, which means that this leaves less and less resources for the non-mandatory developmental activities, So we see this really of growing strategic importance. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I very much look forward to your questions. So we'll switch back to the video now. So I'm looking forward to engaging with you.
Okay. Hi, thank you. Okay. Thank you all for thank you for that excellent presentation, Jenni, and sharing your insights with us. There are several questions already from the audience, so we'll try to address as many as we can in the time frame possible. To our audience, remember to please submit your questions to cmc@sandia.gov. Please do not put those questions in the chat box. We would rather that you email those directly. So please ask questions. And I just wanted to start with our first question, Jenni. And are you finding it easier to engage with partners with the expansive use of remote meeting tools?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I think for like many other organizations, the pandemic has really been a real driver for changing the way we hold meetings, both internally but also externally. So basically, most of our meetings at the moment, given the pandemic restrictions and the work from home policies, are taking place via WebEx at the moment in Safeguards. So most of the meetings are done like this. And also even the meetings that we have with our member states, we have turned into virtual meetings. Just to give you a couple of practical examples, we do this annual seminar on IAEA Safeguards for the diplomatic community here in Vienna, where we kind of bring in the new diplomats up to speed in terms of some of the safeguards concepts, approaches, and technologies. And one of the things we did in the spring is, when we couldn't hold it in person, is that we turned it into a webinar. So that's just one example. But we're even turning some of the board meetings of the IAEA into virtual meetings. So very much the case. And also those meetings with the member state support programs, it's the same thing. They are all held virtually right now. And I think this is not a temporary phenomena. This is more likely to be something that stays very much so. And also particularly in this era of tightening budgets, I think we will have less money to spend on travel, and when we can actually carry out meetings in a much more efficient way, in a virtual way. So I think this is a more permanent direction. Thank you for that question. Thank you,
Jenni. So just to follow on to the question about that we just asked you, what tools are you using for virtual demonstration and testing of emerging technologies? Okay, so if I understand the question, I would just maybe refer to what I just had in my presentation. So sort of I understand tools to mean the different ways in which we take into account emerging technologies. Well, obviously, the Emerging Technologies workshop that I just presented is a key way through which we scan for emerging technologies, and we explore emerging technologies to better understand them by bringing these external speakers into the IAEA. It's a great way of doing it, and it's a much more efficient way of doing it, because rather than spending our staff to go into external events, what we do is that we bring in those external experts with the help of, by the way, our member state support programs to come and talk to our staff, and we can reach a much more broader audience and get more exposure to emerging technologies throughout the department for our staff. So that's sort of the primary vehicle to do that. As for the deployment of some of those technologies, we sort of make an evaluation then, okay, which of those technologies are worth pursuing more and exploring, which we can then translate into the research and development plan, or a
a shorter span development and implementation support program where we ask assistance of member states on specific topics. So these are kind of the primary ways in which we do that. And I would also like to mention that I already made very brief mention about the crowdsourcing initiatives that we have had in Safeguards. So we have put out crowdsourcing challenges where we had, for instance, a specific challenge with regard to some equipment that we use, and we've asked the scientific community to help us improve that equipment. We had the robotics challenge as well, where we had the Hungarian company actually win that particular competition to help us on the spent fuel part. So these are some of the mechanisms through which we scan, explore, and also test some of these technologies. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Jenni. Okay, what barriers might prevent the agency from moving the SIR or portions thereof into an access-controlled interactive digital report? So that's a Safeguards implementation report.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting because actually at this emerging technologies workshop that we had in January this year, we had that one incubator that I talked about on visualization. And one of the reasons why we actually had it is because we have thoughts about, how we could continuously enhance the Safeguards implementation report, which is the primary product that we use to report to our member states on our yearly activities and results. And we were very inspired, I have to say, by this move by the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, from Rome, on how they moved into this digital form and the kind of response they have had from their member states, both in terms of just direct response on how it's more useful, the report, but also how they can measure kind of the volume of the visitors by putting it online. So this has been definitely a very inspirational example for us. And in fact, we also had a visualization expert do some examples of some of the data that we present in the SIR. And she made some illustrations on how we could present the same information in a much more engaging way. And some of those ideas are already going into the next SIR that we are just in the process of developing. So we have, of course, wanted to, so this is all part of the continuous improvement. And obviously we want to consult very closely our member states in this process because this product is for them. So for us, it's very important that we get that right response for them. So definitely that's something that we need to take into account as we improve the product. Next.
Thank you, Jenni. Okay, so now that a year has passed since the 2020 Emerging Technology Workshop, where are you turning your attention to in the emerging technology domain?
Right now, we are focused on taking forward some of the ideas from the 2020 workshop. So as I mentioned, we are just now starting the process of updating our research and development plan. The previous version was released in 2018. So we want to bring some of those ideas into the research and development plan. And the research and development plan is really the primary vehicle through which we communicate to our external stakeholders the needs that we have for support. So that's a primary step. But we have also, for instance, we're advancing this idea of using AI in this video surveillance review. And unfortunately, the pandemic has put a little bit of a delay on that project because we had hoped to bring in experts to Vienna to actually work with our staff here to figure out how to do this, because some of the data, of course, is sensitive, so we cannot really do that in a remote way. But as soon as we can, we are bringing those experts to Vienna to help us advance some of those ideas. But more generally, I would say when it comes to these emerging technologies, I think the two workshops that we have had, both the 2017 and the 2020 workshop, both of them have really illustrated the importance of monitoring these emerging technologies on a more continual basis. We really need to keep an eye on both the challenges and the opportunities that are out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenni. This is a very specific question. So does the IAEA consider that option? Oh, sorry. Okay, is there a plan being developed to meet several well-known technical and legal challenges, such as how to manage flight mission planning, indoors navigation? What is the retrieval plan if a UAV becomes disabled during a mission? So like if it crashes into a contaminated area, how do you approach radio interference concerns as well as what data is being transmitted? So thinking about information security. And this question is very specifically related to UAVs. Okay, now I got a question that I don't know how to answer. Can you maybe try and rephrase that a little bit? So I'll try and catch it a bit. Yeah. So from what I understand, they are looking at what are the technical and legal challenges when it comes to UAVs. So in terms of opportunities for if it's going to be used for safeguards, is the I guess.
Sorry, what's a UAV? What's a UAV?
Okay, I'm sorry. Unmanned aerial vehicle. So drone.
Okay. Yeah. So we're talking about drones. Okay. Yeah.
And I think you could even take this up a level. There's a lot of technologies that fall within this purview in terms of looking at technical and legal challenges, and sort of how are you all looking at the problem in terms of even like information security that's going in and out, and protecting that for member states, and looking at it from that perspective as well when you have a new technology going out.
Okay. I'll take that a little bit one level higher up. And I got similar question actually when I presented in a German workshop on the emerging technologies workshop, and some of the the legal or barriers in particular. So I'll just give you an example. So for instance, we do something like remote monitoring. We have remote monitoring technologies. So that is not a very straightforward thing in the sense that we always have to take into consideration the local legislation of the country that we're operating in. So some of the countries have legislations that prevents us from, for instance, doing remote monitoring. So we always, when we do design a safeguards approach that would rely on technologies, we always have to have that consultative process with the member state in question. So we cannot just impose a certain technology and assume that it's always going to work for that particular state. So we have to, it's a cooperative agreement, if you will, to do this in terms of the deployment of the technologies. So I would say that the same thing applies for something with regard to, drones, etc. So that would really depend, we would really have to look at the legal framework, how can we execute something like that and work with the state. But right now, the drones is something that is certainly something that we keep an eye on, but it is not in the works at the moment. Let's put it this way. Thanks.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Anne-Marie. I saw you put something in the chat as well to clarify. Another question is, how is the IAEA hoping to support the development of an innovative culture, as mentioned in the Emerging Technology Workshop video? So what are you guys doing for that?
That's an excellent question. And actually, that was something that really came through both the 2017 and the 2020 workshop. We had Bernard Myers from the Chief Innovation Officer from IBM at our 2017 workshop. And he was really cautioning us, saying that you really need to make space for innovation. And you need to create that culture that is conducive to innovation. And then we had in 2020, we had Marco Seinberg, who used to be an associate professor of design at Harvard. And he very much sent the same message to us. So he said that, okay, there's always incremental change that you can pursue, but sometimes there's also transformative change that you can pursue. And transformative change you can pursue by asking the question of, if you had to redesign this from the start, how would you do it? Now, the reality is that we're probably more in the incremental change area here at the IAEA. And that's partly because of the environment in which we operate. Like I said, we always have to do things in a way that's realistic to implement than in the field in particular. But one of the ways in which we do this is exactly through the Emerging Technologies workshop. So we used to have something called technology foresight workshops in the past. And we sort of revamped this particular series into what we call now the Emerging Technologies workshops in 2017 and 2020. And one of the key things we changed is that we brought in speakers from other fields, particularly at the 2020 workshop. So we were very inspired by some of the examples, like I said, from the diamond industry, or we had the autonomous vehicle industry presenting on how they're using AI there. So that's one of the key ways in which we do that. And then, of course, we take this work forward by having a departmental team being put together just now for the updating of the R&D plan. But it is a challenge because, we are very a busy organization, and most of our focus obviously goes to implementing the work that we do in the field in particular. So taking that time is difficult, but little steps such as, bringing those outside speakers that inspire us and doing things like what we call lunch and learn events, just where people can come together just to have lunch together and talk about a topic is some ways how we can kind of build that culture one by one. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenni. And I'm sure just having everything be remote and not having those conversations in the hallway makes it a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I think we're all experiencing the same things. So I think you'll probably know who this is from. And so this is the last question, and we'll end it there. Is the IAEA considering how emerging technologies will impact their human users, such as inspectors or analysts? And how are those technologies being assessed from the human user perspective?
Super important. I think one of the key lessons for any organization is that you have to kind of start from the user itself. I mean, what use is a tool or technology if it doesn't serve the person who uses that? No question about that. So we've learned that when it comes to the IT, we had a big modernization project some years ago called Mosaic. And one of the things that we really did is that we had, supplier representatives, but we had user representatives working very closely with each other to ensure that whatever software applications we are creating actually meets the needs of the users, that is the inspectors, the analysts, the technologists. So this is absolutely key. And that is why we also turned this last workshop into this, what I call problem-oriented solution-seeking workshop. So we went out to the Department of Safeguards and we asked our staff, anyone in the staff had the opportunity to, through a survey, to say, what would they like to focus on? What would they like to learn more about? And where would they have needs to develop something into more user-friendly or useful for their work? So this is absolutely a key approach on how we do this. And we got some very good feedback actually on this problem solving. So if you like, the 2017 workshop was more like a scanning horizon thing because it was the first kind in its series. But then the second one was kind of taking a little bit of a deeper dive into specific topics that we had heard from our department that they wanted to deep dive in. So, and we got very encouraging feedback, so we're kind of going in that direction, and we're thinking of other ways how we can take this forward, not just every 2-3 years, but in a more frequent basis. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenni. All right, so this pretty much concludes our Q&A session. Thank you, Jenni, for sharing your thoughts and expertise, and also to our audience for those awesome questions. But before we conclude, I just wanted to mention that you can find out more about the Cooperative Monitoring Center and its ongoing work by visiting cmc.sandia.gov. And this month, we have dedicated it to the IAEA. So I really do encourage you all to go to the website and register for these insightful talks. And from all of us at Sandia's CMC, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you at future CMC events. And with that, we're done. So thank you again. Jenni, did you want to say anything to kind of conclude?
Yes, I just would like to thank again for the invitation to speak. We much appreciate the opportunity to engage with such a community, and I hope we can see each other in person some of these events in the future as well. And much appreciate for everyone who tuned in to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenni. Okay. All right. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Stay safe.